You ever look at a brand new, expensive piece of tech, a phone, a laptop, and just get this little pit in your stomach, this feeling of dread? It's that quiet little voice telling you that no matter how shiny it is or how much you paid for it, its clock is already ticking. It's not built to last, it's built to be replaced. We're just living in this world of design decay, a world built on disposability. But what if there was another way? A totally different philosophy of how we work, what we create, and even how we live.
Yeah, it's a super frustrating and super common experience, right? And it is absolutely not an accident. It's a business model, and it's called planned obsolescence. It's really the engine that powers our whole global economy, an engine that puts short-term growth over everything else, especially over quality that lasts. It demands we be faster, bigger, and more disposable. But this whole idea is actually a pretty recent invention in the grand story of humanity. And in one part of the world, there's this ancient philosophy that's not only surviving, it's thriving, creating things that don't just last for years, but for centuries, sometimes even 1,000 years.
Just look at this number for a second, 33,000. That is how many companies there are in Japan that are over 100 years old. They call them shinise. And get this, among them, at least 7 have been running without stopping for over a millennium, 1,000 years. How is that even possible in a world that worships disruption and hitting your quarterly numbers? What on earth is their secret to basically define time itself?
Well, the secret isn't what you'd think. It's not about expanding or blowing up the market or taking over the world. It's a philosophy of going deeper, not wider, of refining what you have instead of just growing. It's a concept that's just baked into Japanese culture, a single word that holds an entire universe of meaning, shokunin. Now, you'll see it translated as artisan or craftsman, but that doesn't even come close. Shokunin isn't just what you do, it's how you live. And it's the key to understanding how to build things and lives that actually last.
Okay, so let's really dive into this. We're going on a journey to unpack this whole Shokunin spirit. First, we'll see why it's not just a job, but this really deep social duty. Then we're going to walk the 3-stage path they follow to get to true mastery. After that, we'll discover this idea of a soul hidden inside of wood and tools, and then we'll get into the beautiful, almost crazy obsession with perfection. And finally, we'll see how this ancient way of thinking might just be the most powerful strategy we have for our modern world.
All right, first things first, and this is probably the most important part. Shokunin is not a job title. It's more like a role you play in society, a spiritual stance. It goes way beyond just being good with your hands. A true shokunin feels the weight of their community, the honor of their tradition, on their shoulders with every single thing they do.
This quote from the late woodworking shokunin Chashio Odade is the absolute bedrock of the whole idea. And notice, he says there are 2 obligations, material and spiritual. Now, the material part is pretty clear. You have to make something that works, that's beautiful, and that's going to last. But that spiritual obligation, that's the deep part. The shokunin has to hold up a standard of excellence that makes the whole community better, that inspires pride, that just shows a better way of being. Their work feeds both the body and the soul of their society. It's a huge responsibility that goes way beyond just making money.
So check out the contrast here. The Western idea of mastery, a lot of the time, is all about the lone genius, right? The disruptive innovator who smashes the old way of doing things to create something brand new and puts their name on it forever. The shokunin ideal is, well, it's the total opposite. The focus isn't on you getting famous. It's on making sure the craft gets passed on perfectly. The individual craftsman sees themselves as just a temporary vessel, a single, humble link in this long chain stretching back for centuries. Your sacred duty is to take all that knowledge, make it just a tiny bit better, and then pass it on. Innovation here doesn't come from a big explosion. It comes from slow, patient, relentless refinement.
So if the whole point isn't to become a star, but to selflessly perfect a craft, how do you actually get there? It's not a weekend workshop, I can tell you that. It's a disciplined, lifelong journey, and it follows this very specific 3-stage path called a Shu-Ha-Ri. Shu-Ha-Ri. So first, there's Shu. It means to protect or to obey. For the first, 5, 10, maybe even 15 years, the apprentice does nothing but copy the master. Perfectly. No questions, no creative ideas. The point is to build this deep intuitive foundation, to absorb the rules so completely they become muscle memory. Only then, when that foundation is rock solid, can you move to Ha, which means to detach or to break. This is where you start to innovate, to see where the rules can be bent a little. And finally, maybe after decades, you reach Ri, to leave. At this stage, you don't even think about the rules anymore. You are the rules. Your hands just move, guided by pure intuition, creating something totally new,
but that is still true to the soul of the tradition. That first stage, Shu, is so alien to our modern I want it now mindset. I mean, the life of an apprentice, a deshi, is just brutal. For years, they only do what's called zatsuyo, just boring chores, sweeping, prepping materials, polishing rice, and endlessly sharpening the master's tools. But this isn't just hazing. It's a test of kokoro, of your heart, your patience, your commitment. In a world of YouTube tutorials promising to make you a master in 10 easy steps, this is the ultimate rebellion. Knowledge isn't just given to you, you have to earn the right to even learn it. The master teaches in silence, and the apprentice has to learn through nusuge, which means to literally steal the technique with your eyes, just absorbing every little detail through intense observation. And this whole process is designed for one main reason: to suppress the ego, to break down the student's idea that they know better, so they can finally empty their cup and actually learn.
Okay, so let's see how this whole philosophy actually shows up in the real world. After decades of this kind of training, the Shokunin develops this connection with their materials and their tools that is, well, it's almost supernatural. And the perfect example of this is the Miyadaiku, the master carpenters who have been building Japan's incredible temples and shrines for over 1,000 years.
The Miyadaiku are absolute masters of a technique called Kigumi. I want you to imagine building a gigantic, complicated wooden temple without using a single nail, not one screw, not a drop of glue. Kigumi is this system of unbelievably intricate, interlocking wooden joints, all carved with microscopic precision that hold these huge structures together with just pure physics and brilliant design. It's like architectural poetry.
And this is where you see the real genius of the system. The Horyuji Temple, which is one of the oldest wooden buildings on the entire planet, has survived countless huge earthquakes in one of the shakiest places on Earth. How? Because it's not rigid. You see, modern buildings try to fight earthquakes by being stiff. Kigumi works with the earthquake. The hundreds of complex joints aren't locked down tight, they're designed with this tiny bit of give. So when the ground starts shaking, the joints flex and move, and they absorb and spread out that seismic energy. The whole building kind of sways and breathes with the earth instead of just cracking and falling down.
And to do this, the Miyadaiku has to have a relationship with their wood that feels almost telepathic. They believe every tree has a soul, a character. They need to understand its whole life story, which side got the sun and grew strong, which way the wind pushed against it. And they use that knowledge to place the wood in the temple in a way that respects its natural strengths, often putting a pillar in the exact same orientation it had when it was a living tree. This isn't just carpentry. It's a deep, living conversation with the material itself.
And that same deep respect, that same intimate relationship, extends from the wood they shape to the tools they use to shape it. For a shokunin, a tool is never, ever just an object. It's a partner.
This might be one of the most beautiful and, frankly, dramatic examples of that whole philosophy. Harikuyo is basically a funeral for broken sewing needles. Instead of just tossing them in the trash, artisans bring their old, worn-out needles to a shrine. They gently stick them into a soft block of tofu, kind of as a final comfy resting place after a hard life, and they say a prayer of thanks for all their years of service. This ritual just reveals this core belief. Tools are partners in creation. They have a spirit, they work hard, they get tired, and they deserve our gratitude and respect. When you start treating your tools like an extension of your own body and soul, the quality of your work can't help but be transformed.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. This entire mindset, the social duty, the long road to mastery, this deep respect for materials, it all leads to a way of working that, from our modern, efficiency-obsessed point of view, can look like pure, unfiltered madness.
This is the idea of Kodawari. It's a personal, obsessive standard of perfection. It's the drive to get every single tiny detail of your craft right, long after any customer or critic would even notice a difference. For someone with Kodawari, good enough is basically a total failure. The competition isn't another company or another craftsman down the street. The competition is against your own internal, impossible idea of what perfect looks like.
So what does this Kodawari look like in the real world? Well, a world-famous sushi master might spend 45 minutes, 3/4 of an hour, just gently massaging a single octopus. Not 40 minutes, not 50, exactly 45. Why? Because after decades of trying and failing, he knows that is the precise amount of time it takes to break down the proteins to get a texture that isn't just perfect, but sublime.
Or think about a blacksmith who is forging a traditional nail for a temple restoration. To us, a nail is a throwaway commodity, But for the Shokunin, that one nail is everything. He might spend days just picking out the perfect batch of charcoal because he knows its specific chemical makeup will give that single nail the exact properties it needs to last another 500 years inside a wooden pillar where no human eye will ever see it again.
Now, to an outsider, this is just objectively inefficient. It's a crazy waste of time and money. But to the shokunin, it is the only logical path forward. It's the non-negotiable process you have to go through to elevate a craft into an art form. This huge amount of hidden effort is what makes something not just good, but truly sublime. It is the only way to get to real excellence. This lifelong, obsessive quest is perfectly captured by the great artist Katsushika Hokusai, who literally called himself the old man mad about drawing. Even in his 80s, after creating some of the most famous art in history, he felt like he was just getting started. He believed that only when he reached 100 would he get to a divine level, and at 110, every single dot and line he drew would finally be alive. He died at 89, still striving, still feeling like he hadn't truly mastered his craft. That is the soul of Kodawari.
So, what does any of this have to do with us today in our world of disposable stuff and fleeting digital jobs? Well, the Shokunin Spirit isn't about making us all become sushi chefs. It's a mindset. And it might be a powerful antidote to some of our biggest modern problems: burnout, waste, and this feeling that what we do doesn't really matter.
You can really see the two models side by side here. The one that runs our world, on the left, values expansion over everything. It chases short-term growth, and the result is a culture of waste. Waste of materials and waste of our own spirit. The Shokunin model on the right suggests the exact opposite. It says, let's focus on refinement over expansion. The goal isn't crazy growth, but long-term stability and resilience. And the result isn't just lasting quality in the things we make, but a more sustainable, more meaningful way to live and work. It's a strategy for building a career and a life that can actually last.
This philosophy isn't something we should just admire in a museum. It's not some outdated relic. In a world that screams for everything to be done faster, cheaper, and bigger, choosing to do one thing, to do it slowly, with incredible care, and to focus on depth instead of breadth, that is a profoundly revolutionary act. It is a rebellion against the tyranny of now, and it might just be the most powerful strategy we have for a better future.
So as we wrap this up, the final question isn't really about what you do for a living, but how you do it. Whether you're a coder, a writer, a teacher, a parent, a manager, it doesn't matter. The Shokunin Spirit asks you to just look at your work, whatever it is, and ask yourself this one simple but pretty piercing question. Are you putting your soul into it? Are you chasing your own personal standard of excellence? Are you working for the good of other people in both a material and a spiritual way? In a world that is so desperately looking for meaning, maybe the answer has been there the whole time, waiting patiently in the hands of the craftsman.